Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you. Thank you for your letter yesterday in which you announced your support for a Federal uniform standard of custody protection for our men and women in uniform. I get to thank you on behalf of myself, this committee, the staff of this committee, and Eva Slusher from Kentucky, who had lost her daughter in a custody battle as a result of a family law court judge using her time of service against her in a custody battle that she ultimately won and got her daughter back. I know that you know that, unfortunately, throughout our country, there are family law courts that where the judge will use the time away that someone has been deployed or even the threat of deployment as a sole factor for determining custody, resulting in our men and women who should be being honored for their service actually being disadvantaged for their service. I know that you know that this House has passed this in legislation form 5 times, 4 as part of the National Defense Authorization Act and once as part of a standalone bill. Your letter indicates that you will be assigning your staff with the responsibility to negotiate language that can ultimately be enacted in legislation to provide that protection. This is a battle that's been going on for 5 years now in legislation. And I know that you know this doesn't just affect our service members who are currently in custody battles, and we're not asking for them to be advantaged, we just don't want them to be disadvantaged, but it also affects our service members who have the stress of the concern that they may be subject to a custody battle and don't have a national standard of which they can have confidence. Many of these custody battles involve 3 states. The state in which the original custody order was issued, the state where the service member is currently assigned, and the state in which the child currently lives. So the national standard is going to be so important to provide them that confidence. So my first question to you, and I have 2 other topics I want to get to, is I believe that this should not wait for the National Defense Authorization Act this year. This House has passed it as a standalone bill. It is passed on suspension on the House floor. We passed it 4 other times as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. If we roll up our sleeves, we can get this done and pass this very quickly through the House. And I'd like to have your support for us to get to work on this right away.
We certainly will do that. Whether you can get it through the House in a hurry, I guess, is up to you all.
That would be excellent. The second thing I want to talk to you about is the issue of sexual assault. In my district, we had a woman, Maria Lauterbach, who was tragically murdered after making allegations of sexual assault. I've worked with Jane Harman and Representative Tsongas on provisions that we've gotten enacted over the past several years that address the issue of sexual assault. The New York Times article in reporting the lawsuit that has been filed identifies that the legislative accomplishments so far are modest. We actually had in this last National Defense Authorization Act provisions that went to the issue of sexual assault, one of which would have provided a mechanism for expedited consideration and priority for base transfers for those who have been subject to sexual assault, another providing privileged communication between a victim and an assigned victim advocate. All of those did not make it into the final bill. I just want to bring them to your attention and hope that we would have DOD's support as we move to try to place those provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act this year. And then my third topic is NNSA. I'm the chairman of the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. One of the things that I've been concerned about with this continuing resolution process and then the upcoming fiscal year 2012 budget is that NNSA, being part of DOE, has not been recognized as really being part of the defense infrastructure. So when people talk about cutting everything that is non-security related, so many times they're missed and actually subject to a cut. As we look to the importance of NNSA and the additional funding that they need to respond to supporting our nuclear infrastructure, I'd appreciate your comments on certainly both their importance, the importance of this funding, and also the characterization that should be made that NNSA is certainly part of our national security infrastructure and certainly does very important defense work.
Well, I simply can endorse the last 2 statements. I mean, it is incredibly important, and it clearly is intimately tied to our national security and should be regarded as part of the security component.
Just to add one point from a budgetary standpoint, in 13 to 16, we actually have some money in the defense budget, which on an annual basis will be transferred to NNSA. The desire was to emphasize the partnership between our two organizations. As the Secretary said, they are very important to meeting our nuclear needs.
Excellent. Thank you both, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.